Science and Practice, Tools for Critical Thinking and Research series. This episode is on what is the placebo effect?
The placebo effect is a fascinating phenomenon by which a make-believe intervention with no active ingredient can make people feel better and sometimes even producing genuine bodily changes. A placebo can be a treatment or a drug such as a sugar pill, a saline injection, or any other inactive substance. They are sham treatments, except that they work, at least in certain cases.
Why does the placebo effect work? Surely you have experienced how the placebo effect works. Remember when you were a child and you hurt yourself? Your mum would come and give you a magic kiss to make the pain go away. And surprisingly, it worked. This is a perfect example of the placebo effect in action. It worked because of your expectations. As a child, you believed your mother could heal your pain, so it did. The same applies to service users' expectations regarding treatments from their doctors, even if it is just a sugar pill. Many factors shape how the service user feels about treatment. The service user-doctor relationship, the way the doctor talks to them, how the treatment is presented, the clinical setting, the service user's emotional state, their prior experiences, and even the appearance of the medication, such as its packaging or color. Doctors often notice that positive expectations enhance the efficacy of the intervention. However, the flip side also exists. The nocebo effect happens when a person experiences worsening symptoms or side effects simply because they expect something bad to happen. A patient taking a placebo pill in a clinical trial reports nausea, headaches, or fatigue because they were told these side effects might happen. Powerful stuff.
How does the placebo effect actually work? Well, we could say that the real magic happens in our minds. When a person believes they are receiving a real treatment, their body can sometimes respond accordingly. It highlights the incredible power of our beliefs and expectations, illustrating the influence of the mind on the body. Neuroscientists who study the brain have discovered that having positive expectations can activate key brain areas, such as the prefrontal cortex, which play an important role in planning and decision-making. This area combines information coming from past experiences and from the surroundings to understand the context in which the treatment is given. In turn, other regions related to reward and motivation are activated. This kind of brain activation can lead to the release of certain hormones and chemicals that actually help us feel better. For example, it can trigger the release of endorphins, the body's natural painkillers, as well as neurotransmitters like dopamine and opioids. In conditions where dopamine levels are low, like Parkinson's disease, some patients have even shown improvements in movement, simply because their brains were stimulated by belief or expectation. We can conclude that placebo seems most effective on symptoms that the brain can regulate. It may significantly impact health conditions like pain, asthma, joint ache, migraines, high blood pressure, or depression. However, placebo will not make a tumor go away, heal broken bones, or improve your cholesterol levels single-handedly. Let's come back to the how. One explanation scientists have identified for the placebo effect is classical conditioning, a concept famously demonstrated by Pavlov and his dog. Pavlov noticed that dogs naturally started drooling when they saw food. To study how learning works, he began ringing a bell before giving them food. After doing this several times, the dogs began to drool just from hearing the bell, even when no food followed. Their brains had learned to link the sound of the bell with the arrival of food. The same kind of learning can happen with placebos. If someone regularly feels pain relief after taking a certain medication, the brain may start to connect taking a pill with feeling better. So even when the pill is a placebo with no active ingredient, the body might still react as if it's real because of that learned connection.
Why is the placebo effect important? First, because in clinical trials it often serves as a control. It is used to test the efficacy of new medications, particularly in drug trials. Here is what scientists do in a trial. They divide participants into two groups. One receives the real medication, while the other gets a fake version, the placebo, that looks identical but contains no active ingredients. Since participants do not know which group they're in, researchers can compare the results between both groups. The treatment is considered ineffective if both groups show similar outcomes, regardless of whether they have received the real drug or not. This is because if the medication is working, you'd expect those receiving it to have a better outcome than those receiving a sugar pill. Here is where it gets tricky. Placebos work because people think the treatment they are receiving might have an effect. This belief effect also happens to the group receiving the actual medicine. It can influence patients' expectations of how the real drug will function, changing how they respond to the treatment and, therefore, causing confusion in trial results. Sometimes, people might guess they are taking the placebo if they do not feel any side effects that other patients are talking about. This can stop the placebo from working in the control group, which can lead to unreliable results. That is why people in these studies should not talk to each other about their experiences, to avoid influencing what everyone expects. The second reason it's important to know about the placebo effect is that if we can understand how placebo works, we can use its powers for good. Doctors could help patients get better results from treatments by boosting their expectations. They might even find ways to teach people how to tap into their body's natural healing abilities using their own minds.
Conclusion. Just like when a parent's kiss seems to magically ease the pain of a childhood fall, placebos can have real effects on some health conditions. They can trigger responses in the brain and body that closely mimic those caused by actual medications. This reveals something powerful. Both our thoughts and real drugs can activate similar healing pathways in the body. This understanding is starting to reshape how we think about clinical trials and healthcare. Scientists now recognize that the placebo effect can enhance treatment outcomes by tapping into the body's natural healing systems. That's why studying placebos has become so important, not only to improve medical treatments, but also to make sure clinical trials are accurate and reliable. This is especially crucial in places where access to conventional medication is limited. However, using placebos in practice does raise ethical concerns, particularly around honesty and patient consent. That's why any use of placebos in treatment needs to follow strict professional and ethical standards.